Welcome to the third class of TSD Mindfulness teachings. I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a really great class. There's just a lot that's going to be here tonight. So I'm really glad that you made it, and let's just go ahead and get started. So just a review from our last class, we talked about the TSD Mindfulness objective, which is to move into perfect relationships by taming your mind, soothing your gut, and dwelling in your heart. And these relationships include relationships with yourself, relationships with other people in your life, relationships with the food that you eat, with your money, with God, if that's your path of spirituality, with anything, with everything, these relationships with everything. And this perfection of these relationships is not based on your idea of what perfection is, your personal expectations. This perfection is defined by a system larger than you. So we talked a little bit about that last week as well. And we talked about how the practice and the benefits from the practice are gradual, that it's an incremental process, like peeling the layers of an onion. And we talked about another teaching. We talked about anything is either a form of relationship or a form we have a relationship with. And that the reactions that we have in our relationships are the symptoms of the relationship, and our desires define the relationship. And these relationships, they have meaning. They're emotional, even if they're not with another human being. They have meaning and they are emotional. And our experience in this world is directly affected by each and every relationship we have with each and everything. Therefore, if we improve the quality of our relationships, we in turn improve the quality of our life experience. So if we improve the quality of our relationships, we in turn improve the quality of our life experience. And I'll go over the review of the actual meditation that we did last time when we get to the meditation this time. I decided this time I would save that for a little bit later. So tonight we're just going to go ahead and jump into some new teachings. I talked about how the teachings are in tiers. There's one list of 1, 2 lists of 2, 3 lists of 3, 4 lists of 4, and 5 lists of 5. In the second list, the first list on the second tier, it's a little sometimes hard to keep it all straight, but the first list on the second tier are the 2 prophecies. And the second prophecy, we talked about the first one last week, and the second prophecy is we are meant to grow into perfect relationships with all beings great and small. We are meant to grow into perfect relationships with all beings great and small. So harmony is the nirvana of TSD mindfulness. Harmony between species, harmony with our environment, harmony between romantic partners, harmony between you and your vices. It's all directed toward creating harmony. And personal harmony is not attained overnight. And national harmony is not gotten to in a single presidential term. And global harmony is not perfected in a lifetime. So again, talking about this incremental process that brings us to this harmony. And what's nice about that incremental process, right? It's not like instant. So we can focus on the positive. The positive thing about this incremental process is that we can continuously feel grateful because it's continually happening. We are continuously peeling those layers of the onion and getting closer to that harmony, so we're always in a place where we can be grateful for that process and moving in that way. And so let's consider someone who's struggled through many broken relationships over the years. This person might feel as though they give too much to a relationship, and so they consistently feel that they're betrayed and hurt in the end. And then let's consider this person practices TSD mindfulness and how that practice plays out in those challenges that they're having and facing. So what will start to happen is their relationships will start to change. And they're learning how to dwell, and the relationships are changing because they are learning how to dwell in their heart. And this person is becoming more conscious of what they need. And they're becoming more confident to set boundaries. So this TSD mindfulness practice is moving their consciousness into their heart, which is, it's allowing them to just be more in tune with what's good for them. And that includes setting these boundaries. And when we move our consciousness into our heart, we are able to become more vulnerable in our relationships. So the these changes that start happening is this vulnerability. And we can feel more genuine feelings from our heart and talk about these feelings. So again, that second prophecy states, we are meant to grow into perfect relationships with all beings, great and small. I don't interpret this to be actual size. I interpret this greatness to be importance. So we're meant to grow into these perfect relationships with the people who are extremely important in our lives, and also those people that seem less significant. I interpret the beings to be anything that exists. So I talked about last time a law, the speeding limit, as being a form that we have a relationship with. That's it bees, it exists, right? And so that's encompassing everything. If our relationships are improving as a result of TSD mindfulness practice, they are improving equally across the board. Okay, the practice does not discriminate. It affects all relationships in your realm. So an example might be if you're practicing and the relationships are changing and you're noticing your relationship with yourself is healthier. And you might also notice that your relationship with social media is also becoming healthier. I could pick two things that aren't so closely related. Maybe a relationship with a particular person in your family grows stronger and better. And then your relationship with one of your vices is also getting to be in a better place. So it's wide, it's spread. It's just and it's incremental, right? It's incremental. It's not just like bam, everything's awesome, but it is working on all of the relationships together without discriminating. And let's see, moving into perfect relationship does not mean everything becomes positive, becomes apparent, becomes solid, right? So it's not like all of a sudden it's just a more positive relationship or it's more apparent. You just can notice all the details of the relationship, the aspects of the relationship better, or it becomes more solid. That might not necessarily be how the relationship changes. The relationship might dwindle. It might be a better word to use is lighten. The relationship lightens, with something that maybe the dependency is too strong. And so it can have that kind of shift. All right, so the first teaching, so we're moving on to a new teaching already. The first teaching on trust. So there's the second tier. The first list on that second tier are the two prophecies, and then the second list on that tier are the two teachings on trust. And so this first teaching is logic and survival instinct cannot wholeheartedly be trusted. So I'm saying that again, and just notice how that affects you. What feelings come up when I say that? Logic and survival instinct cannot wholeheartedly be trusted. So this teaching might challenge some present perspectives that you have. We come into our practice with a certain set of views that are based on our personal experience. They're based on the possibly cultural views, the culture of our family, the culture of our peers, the culture of our nation. So culturally, logic and instinct are accepted as being quite valid, right? And as children, we're taught to rely on logic to solve problems. And we're taught that survival instinct has proven to keep species alive. Right? So these are some of the ideas that we already have about logic and survival instinct. What's more, logic and survival instinct really do work. They're effective. However, logic and instinct are not usually effective approaches for making decisions when it comes to relationships. So logic and instinct aren't necessarily effective approaches when it comes to making decisions about your relationships. So to genuinely improve a relationship, we need to move away from logic and away from instinct to guide us. So one of the most important reasons for letting go of logic, for example, and let's just talk about both of them, letting go of logic and instinct while we're practicing TSD mindfulness, is it moves our consciousness into our heart. So the heart is not driven by logic, and the heart is not driven by instinct. Therefore, we're not in our heart. If we're in a process of logical thinking, or we're in a process of instinctual urges, we're not in our heart, because our heart doesn't operate that way. It doesn't operate on logic, and it doesn't operate on instinct. So we're just not, we're not in our heart fields when we are relying on these other ways to operate. So logic is what drives our mental field, and therefore if we let go of this logic, then we're kind of like moving our consciousness out of our mental field, and we're moving our consciousness into our heart field. And so one of the most effective ways to move our consciousness into our heart field is to quiet our logic, to tame our mental field, to quiet our logic by practicing TSD mindfulness. And survival instinct is what drives our gut. Therefore, if we let go of the survival instinct, then we move our consciousness into our, we're moving our consciousness out of our gut and into our heart field. One of the most effective ways to move your consciousness out of your gut field is to soothe and reassure your gut, which in turn quiets your instinct. So logic and survival instinct cannot wholeheartedly be trusted. I'll go into this a little bit more detail because there's still some loose ends out there, right? So we've talked about how we can move into our heart if we let go of these types of processes, the way in which to operate. Have you ever noticed your mind leads you to a way of thinking that was not helpful? Logic is probably what brought you there. So this logic might not have been justified, it might not have been gracious, but it was logical. Logic is not bound to supporting our highest interest. Logic is not synonymous with good. Right? So logic is not bound to supporting our highest interest. Revenge is logical. Right? If P, then Q. If so-and-so does this to us, then we going to do it back. Right? Very logical, completely logical. And it makes a lot of sense in that way. Blame. Blame is logical. Right? No, I didn't do it. Didn't work out like that. It was this. This is the logical sequence to how it all works. And that's our logical mind putting all that together. Is kindness logical? Is gratitude logical? It can be, right? We can use logical thinking to come to kindness. Well, so-and-so did that, so we should be kind to them. Or so-and-so did that for us, so I'm going to be thankful. I'm going to be grateful. When we use logic to be kind and to be grateful, to feel gratitude, it's not always the best feeling, right? It feels better, really, for it to come from our hearts and to not necessarily use logic to get us there, but it certainly can be logical, definitely. So survival instinct works in the same way. Our instinct can certainly keep us out of harm's way, and in some cases it can save our lives. However, sometimes instinct can steer us away from something that can really help us. For example, if we're standing in front of a crowd and we're about to give an important speech, and those butterflies that you're feeling in your stomach are your gut's reaction to your own bravery. Right? That's the gut is acting up and the instinct is coming up. We'll get more into that in a later class, but basically we're talking about the gut fear of something not working out, like survival, emotional survival, physical survival. All right. Another example of your gut field using instinct that isn't necessarily helpful is maybe that anxiety that you're feeling right before you become vulnerable to a romantic partner, right? It's a little scary. And so it's not always like if we're feeling that anxiety, it's not like, oh, we need to definitely pay attention to this and not go forward, right? We need to stop because that's what the anxiety is, like stop, right? So survival instinct is sometimes valuable and sometimes it's not. And so it cannot wholeheartedly be trusted. So survival instinct is sometimes valuable, sometimes it's not. So it cannot be wholeheartedly trusted. And so same with logic, right? Logic can sometimes be really helpful, but sometimes it's not. And so it can't wholeheartedly be trusted. So I'll go back to that. Logic and survival instinct cannot wholeheartedly be trusted. It's not that it can't be trusted sometimes. It's just like if and when, those kinds of things. So it's like that wholeheartedly, like every single time we can trust our logic, every single time we can trust our instinct. That's not really how it works. So TSD mindfulness helps us navigate our logic and instinct that falls in those gray areas. Like some things are easy, right? Maybe even those butterflies that you're feeling before you stand up in front of an audience. That's easy for us to discern that, okay, I'm not going to not stop because I have butterflies in my stomach. I know better that this is actually going to be helpful for me in the long run. So some of those things we can navigate really well. But there's some a little bit more gray areas that are a little bit harder for us. Like, is this, should I stop or should I go? That kind of thing. So that's one of the things that TSD mindfulness can do, helping you fine tune into that mental field and that gut field and that heart field, and really discerning between those and when to trust and when not to trust and so forth. That's not like the total basis of what TSD mindfulness is. It's just kind of like a little side benefit, all right? When practicing TSD mindfulness, you will find clarity on these subtle areas of your life, which in turn improve your relationships with the people and the things in your life. So it does add to it for sure, but there's like other things that are like way huger that we'll get to and talk about and that you'll experience. All right. Moving into the meditation part for tonight. Let me just check the time. Here. Okay. Got plenty of time. So reviewing a little bit from last time when it came to the meditation, I led you to only use your will to direct your attention. In other words, to concentrate. Right? Use your will to concentrate, to direct your attention. So don't use your will for anything else. We're going to let go of using your will to carry anything else out, mental, emotional, otherwise. But to definitely use that will to direct your attention. I led you to focus on your breath to help tame your mental field. And we moved our consciousness into the gut area, the gut field, and we're reassuring ourselves that in this present moment that we are safe and the future is preserved. And one of the ways of soothing the gut, because the gut fears change. And we talked about how the gut is very it's, we have this system, right? We have this mental field, this gut field, this heart field, and it's amazing that how the gut field, when it's triggered, it can really take over the whole system. So it's really important to have some techniques for soothing that gut when that happens. So this temperamental body, the mental field, the gut field, and the heart field. So tonight we're going to continue to tame the mental field and soothe the gut field, and we will begin to dwell in the heart. So these first two classes, Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3, are a real good foundation for the practice, for all three of those aspects of the practice. So after this class, you'll have that foundation to be able to do the whole, maybe not in depth yet, but